Hi everyone, thank you for joining another Google Plus Hangout with First. I am Chelsea Jones. I'm the Associate Director of Student Programs here, and December is here. You're in the process of wrapping up your college applications and getting all of your letter of recommendations ready and getting those essays finalized, and I know it's probably an insane time for you right now. So on this special Google Hangout, we are going to provide you guys with some amazing tips and tricks and different advice that you can use to make the most of this time. We want you, to have your applications complete. We want you to present the best package to these colleges and universities so that you're accepted. So on this Hangout, we have some great panelists that will give you a ton of awesome information that you will be able to use to make the most of this time. So I am going to hand it over to our awesome panelists and let them introduce themselves. But before I do that, I just want to let you guys know that this is a live Google Plus Hangout, and because it's live, you have the ability to submit questions to us. Now we have a live Q&A portion on this website, so as you're watching this, if you have any questions, feel free to submit that question, and what we'll do at the end of the Hangout, we'll be able to answer your questions. So I definitely encourage you to sit tight and stay throughout the entire Hangout, because you never know, if you submit us a question, we'll probably answer it. So you definitely want to stay tuned for that. So I'm going to head it over to our amazing panelists and let them introduce themselves, and then we'll jump right into the questions. So Maria, you can go first.
Thank you, Chelsea. Hi, everybody. My name is Maria Asayag. I am Director of Diversity Recruitment at Lehigh University. I am also Associate Director of Recruitment here at Lehigh. I'm starting my 5th recruitment year. I'm very excited. Every single year brings brand new surprises. It brings a brand new class, just completely new set of students. So I'm very excited to share some tips with you guys to get the application process started and finished.
I guess I'll go next. My name is Tanya Rechkeski, and I'm the Director of Outreach for the Common Application. I have been here at the Common Application since July, and so it's really exciting to be able to meet with students and help them in their process.
Hey everybody, my name is Scott Burke, and I'm the Assistant Vice President and Director of Undergraduate Admissions at Georgia State University. I've been at Georgia State since 2008, but I've been in admissions for over 20 years. So I'm glad to be a part of the Hangout today.
Awesome. Thanks so much, guys, for introducing yourselves. So as you guys see, for everyone that's watching, we have amazing panelists, and they're going to be able to answer all of your questions. We have some really good information that we're going to share with you. So let's jump right into it. So my first question, it doesn't matter what order you answer in, just have at it. So the first question is, what makes an application complete? Application that students need to make sure that they have together.
So I'll go ahead and start. I'd say what makes an application complete is definitely satisfying all of the requirements. Every single college has totally separate set of requirements. I mean, for some it could be as easy as submitting a common application and that's it. And maybe they're SAT optional. Others will require a common application, a supplement, and an external supplement for a different program that you may be considering. So I would say triple check with the colleges that you're applying to that every single application requirement for each one is completed, that you've maybe made yourself a spreadsheet that says I've completed this on this day, and really stay organized. But what makes an application complete obviously is satisfying every single specific college requirements that that each college is asking for.
I think that's a great advice. I think it's important to do your research ahead of time, as Maria just said, to make sure you understand the requirements for each of the institutions that you're applying to, because we don't all do it necessarily the same way. Some might require extra standardized tests, while others that you're applying to may not. So I think that's great, is to create a spreadsheet for yourself for the schools that you're applying to, and that's just a great way to be able to check off everything that's required for each of those institutions as you're going through the application process.
I definitely think staying organized is the key, and in some ways the process starts with the application, but then you need to make sure that you tell your guidance counselor or school counselor that you've applied to certain schools so that they can send your transcript and recommendations, and making sure that if you need a specific letter of recommendation that you have that. So some colleges will say that you can submit a recommendation from any teacher. Others will say it needs to be a very specific teacher, either an English or a history or a math teacher. So just make sure that you're giving the colleges the things that they ask for.
All right, awesome. Thanks so much, guys. So the next question is, what are some of the common mistakes that you've noticed that students make while completing their applications for college?
So something I've been noticing over the years has been the fact that students are really thorough about proofreading their essay, but they fail to proofread the other parts of the application, even just for some colleges that do accept the Common Application, even just the Common Application itself. I find a lot of just sloppy errors on, for example, the extracurricular section when they're describing the activity that they're doing. Sometimes I see, little errors like lowercase i's or things that are overlooked because I feel like so much pressure, so much attention is put on the essay that the rest of the application just, I guess is just completed just because they need to complete the application. So that's a common error that I'm seeing. I'm also seeing that if a school that is a Common Application school also requires a supplement for that specific school or college, sometimes I'm seeing, like, for example, a Lehigh supplement is required as a part of the Lehigh application, and I'm seeing that students are literally writing another college name for the application that's meant to go to Lehigh. So I'd say also double checking, triple checking, making sure the right essay or the right paragraph, the right essay that you're working on is actually going to the right college. So being careful about that.
Some common mistakes that we see on our side are students, again, who put the wrong institution's name. Again, same thing as Maria had indicated. We see students that just, look like that they just didn't really take the time to fill out the application in a very deliberate manner, and often are making, again, some of those very same mistakes, spelling errors, grammatical errors, all those things. You just need to be mindful and take this very, very seriously, because we do spend a lot of time on our side putting time into these applications and reviewing these, and we expect the same thing to come from students. Another big one for us is students that miss deadlines and then write to us and say, hey, I think I've missed your deadline. Can I still submit? And it just depends on the situation. Oftentimes they've missed our early action deadline. They might miss a scholarship deadline, and we can't be and aren't as flexible on those. So I think it goes back to that something that Tanya said earlier about organization and keeping organized and knowing what each of the deadlines for the institutions that you're applying to are. That seems to be things that really get the students that apply to Georgia State is missing those deadlines.
One of the other mistakes I've seen is that students don't check their email. Colleges communicate with students via email very frequently. And if something is missing or an application is incomplete, or if there's a great scholarship opportunity or an opportunity to visit and students don't check their email, they might miss out on a really great opportunity, or they might miss out on having the opportunity to submit that additional information. So I would say a mistake I often see is not checking your email.
I want to add something to that too, because I think it's something that we talk a lot about in admissions is an appropriate email address. Also, we see a number of students that use inappropriate names in an email address, and that just really is something you all need to be mindful as you're completing your applications. If you've got an email address that's risky, don't use it. Don't submit it. Sign up to get another one. There are lots of opportunities to do that. So use an appropriate email address.
Awesome. Thank you so much. All really great information, especially Scott with the email address. I can attest to that. When I was in high school, my email address wasn't the most appropriate, and luckily someone told me that I needed to make a new one specifically for my colleges. So that's definitely key. So thank you guys for that information. So the next question is for Scott and Maria. So you guys talked a little bit about incomplete applications and whatnot, but how much does an incomplete application hurt a student? And can application documents be sent in separately and at different times?
So yes, thank you, Chelsea, for that question, because it is important to know that application requirements can be sent in at different times. I strongly urge students to send things in before the deadline. You know, for some schools, like for example for Lehigh University, we have a deadline of January 1st for regular decisions, and we've been receiving supplements. We've been submitting SAT scores, TOEFL scores for some students, you know, these last few weeks. But as long as everything is here by January 1st, you know, everything will absolutely be fine. And I think an incomplete app, especially in regular decision, and especially after we've sent students 2 emails plus a letter home and the app is still incomplete, it just shows that there is less interest on behalf of the student on wanting to attend that particular university. I mean, I know when I was in high school, I was always a student that was like, oh my goodness, you know, I have to get everything in, no matter if it's an essay, a homework assignment, I have to get it in before a deadline. And I feel like college, the whole college application process should be taken exactly the same way, and make sure that everything is in, because it can show lack of interest, and those things can hurt along the way. You know, if it's regular decision and it's mid-February and we're still missing parts of the application, that for me, even when the student does complete the application and is given a thorough review, I feel like it will negatively affect a student's application.
And I think it's important too that if your intention is not to complete your application, to please let us know. Because as Maria said, we'll send you letters, we'll send you emails saying, hey, your application has been incomplete for a period of time. And if you have now decided, I'm not going to continue pursuing my application, it's great if you notify us and let us know and let the colleges know so that we can appropriately withdraw your application and we don't have to be spending time continuing to send you reminders. And the important thing here is if your intention is to get a decision, you can't get a decision with an incomplete application. You have to submit everything before we can send you out what our admissions decision is going to be. And it's just imperative to make sure that you notify us one way or the other. Yes, I plan to complete that application and I'm going to get everything in by X date, or no, I'm going to withdraw my application now so that we can appropriately withdraw you.
I wanted to add one little comment about this. Sometimes students panic when they hear from a college that their information hasn't been sent in from their high school counselor. And sometimes colleges, when you submit that application, there's an automatic reply that goes directly to the student that says, thank you so much for your application, make sure you send in your transcript and letters of recommendation. And the system doesn't know that your teachers have already done their part, so don't panic until you know for sure that the application information hasn't arrived there.
Awesome, thanks guys. Alrighty, so we are going to move on to the next question. So in the perspective of an admissions officer or of someone working in admissions, what is looked at as a complete application? So when you think of a complete application or when you see one, what does that entail? And then also, what makes applications stand out from one another?
I feel like a complete application is obviously satisfying all the admissions requirements, as I previously stated, but I'd also have to say that making sure every answer that is specific to that university, even any answer on the common application, if the school does accept common applications, is thorough, is sufficient enough, isn't just like one sentence out there. I feel like there's a lot to be said for students who really do take their time and answer the question in the prompt, and are also very thorough and very concise in their response. I feel like that's a complete application, because yeah, you can certainly throw something together in a matter of days, but I still feel like there's so much of value to really truly taking the time to submit something that the student is genuinely proud of. And I'd say something that makes the students stand out or the application stand out, amidst the thousands that we read every single year, is definitely getting a sense of the student's personality. I feel like the whole application can tell a story. The letters can tell us something. Obviously, the essay can tell us something if it's a personal essay. But the more I hear about that particular student's personality in terms of like what they would contribute to campus, what kind of student they would be, what kind of roommate they would be, what kind of classmate they would be, all of those things are extremely important when I, for example, have to talk about that student in a committee setting. It helps me to remember the student's application, and then therefore helps me also support the student's application as well. So the more we can hear about the student's personality, the better.
And I think the only thing that I'll add to Maria's response, I thought that was a really great answer to the question about a complete application. Again, it's gonna differ from campus to campus about what a complete application is that you're applying to. In terms of what helps make an application stand out is also, I think, what the student plans to contribute to the campus. So what is it that excites you about the college or university that you're applying to? We want to know how you're going to contribute, what type of college citizen you're going to be on our campuses. So I think being able to express that in the application, whether it's in your essay or additional writing supplement, let us know what you plan to contribute to our campuses.
We are going to move on to the next question. And the next one is about application fees. Now, everybody knows application fees are expensive. People don't really have a ton of money. So along the terms of first-generation families and students paying for these application fees, a lot of them just can't afford it. So is there anything that colleges and universities are doing, or maybe even organizations are doing, to help assist them with this process? Is there anything that they can do to get assistance to pay for application fees?
I'll start this one. So first and foremost, there are lots of application fee waivers available out there. For students that use the Common Application, you can apply up to 20 schools, and if you qualify for a fee waiver, you can use a fee waiver for each one of those 20 schools, which I think is just awesome. And in order to get the fee waiver, there's some very simple questions students answer in their application. So it asks if a student has, and it starts off very general, like they ask, is the application fee process a barrier to your applying to colleges? Because colleges want to make college accessible. And it would break our hearts if you couldn't apply to your dream school because it was too expensive. And so there's some basic questions that students are asked to answer, but then the last option is my counselor or someone else can submit a letter explaining what's going on. So even if a student doesn't fall within one of the normal categories for needing assistance, there's always those situations that somebody else knows about that they can help you in this process. So students can make one of those selections, and then their counselor verifies it, and then that fee waiver gets processed and goes through. In addition to that, for schools that are not on the Common Application, ACT and College Board have fee waivers as well, and I believe you can get up to 4 fee waivers from SAT, from College Board, and 4 from ACT.
There's also there's a third too. The National Association for College Admissions Counseling also has fee waivers, and they have that on their website where students and counselors can download those forms and submit those to the colleges that they're applying to. You have to look at this again from institution to institution, although. As Tanya said, as members of the Common Application, students can select up to 20 institutions. If students are using a state application, you'll want to see if there's the ability to say, can I submit my application with a fee waiver and so on. So the Common App does a really good job with this, but also, too, you want to look at perhaps even your own states. If you're applying to state schools in your area, they may have a Common Application there as well, and you could submit a request for a fee waiver then, and they would, again, accept the ACT, SAT, and the NACAC fee waivers.
And I just want to add, kudos to the Common Application, kudos to College Board, the National Association of College Admissions Counselors, because they are making, college so accessible. And as Tanya stated before, it would be such a shame if a student can't apply somewhere just because of financial reasons. So I know each and every single college has their own policy. At Lehigh, for example, if none of those ways work for you, or you can't find them, or there's something going on that you can't obtain a fee waiver that way, you can always contact our office and we'll be able to grant you one. But there's a lot of resources out there to truly make college access, just that, very accessible.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much for that really, really important information. I think it's really important, especially for our first-gen student audience, because a lot of times, again, they're going about this process alone. So an average, first-gen student wouldn't know that, Common App allows for 20 fee waivers, or, National Admissions Counseling Association allows, has fee waivers. So again, thank you guys so much for even letting that information be known. And even a lot of first-gen students don't even know that they can pick up the phone and call that college or university and say, hey, I don't have a ton of money, can't really afford the fee waiver, but I'm really, really interested in applying. So just having that information there is really, really important. So thank you guys so much for this.
Chelsea, can I add something to that too? Because you just brought up, I thought, a very important point.
Yeah.
About students reaching out to our institutions. And, we all have admissions counselors or territory managers that are assigned to geographic locations, and most of us have some sort of web page where you can find that information and see who's responsible for your area. And those are great individuals for students to reach out to ask these very important questions. And especially for first-generation students, if they don't have somebody necessarily at home who has this information or a good network to help them go through this process, we have great admissions people at great institutions across this country this is what we do. These are the types of questions we want you to ask us, and so we can help you navigate this process successfully.
Awesome, thanks. Alrighty, so the next question, and again, it is for all of you. What are some do's and don'ts on students contacting a school to see if all of their material has been received? I remember when I was in high school, I called my colleges every single day. They got tired of me because I just wanted to make sure that all of my material was received. And I know you guys are receiving tons of calls and emails. So, sort of what are some do's and don'ts around what students should be doing just to make sure that their material has been received and making sure that they're staying on top of things?
I think one of the things that's important is that students, I think we've talked about this already, but check your email, because a lot of colleges will send you information saying this is what still needs to be completed. Or they might send you a login and password for a portal that will allow you to be able to check online to see if your application is complete. So there's a lot of opportunities for self-servicing to find out if your applications are complete. But then certainly, referring back to what Scott said, if you know who your admissions rep is, then you can very easily reach out to that person and find out if your application is complete, see what else you need to submit, check to see if you need to have an interview or whether there's an additional letter of recommendation that might be helpful to your candidacy. So making a friend in the admissions office of the schools you're most interested in can really benefit you.
To add to that, I'd also say self-service is very important. I mean, some schools will offer the opportunity to create an online portal, meaning that it's like your own little mini homepage at that particular school, and some of them will have admissions checklists and financial aid checklists that will actually say, the date that we received different parts of your application. So if the schools you're applying to have something like that, please start one, sign yourself up for it. It's very important we call the Lehigh applicant portal, for example, and it's a very simple, very easy way for you to check if your application has been complete without having to contact anybody, without having to pick up a phone or do anything along those lines. So I'd say if you can start one, do one of those if it's offered to the colleges that you're applying to. But something else I'd say is do give yourself enough time to follow up. I say this just because, you know, the other day I had a student who, it's early decision and we're wrapping it up and we need the items to be in like 2 weeks ago. You know, we're still working on this. But, you know, I had a student who was contacting me at 6 p.m. on a Friday just to make sure that everything is in. And obviously at that point, you know, my hands are tied, the office is closed. So give yourself enough time to check that everything is in on time. So if we're giving you a deadline of, you know, a Friday at 4 p.m., don't contact us at 3:50 p.m. basically. Give yourself enough time to make sure that you, to also give us enough time to double check on your behalf.
And give us a little bit of time after you've submitted the application. You know, we see a number of students who submitted the application yesterday and then are contacting us today to say, okay, is it complete? Is it ready? Are you going to give me, you know, a decision? And I think it's important to give it a little bit of time, especially for your documents, to match, because all of us are getting thousands and thousands of applications, which means, you know, if we've got 3 or 4 requirements that go along with that, that's a lot of paper that has to connect with the application, and so it takes time for it to go through our system. So, you know, that's where the status check is so very important too, because you can check that. We know students check it on a daily basis, but I recommend, you know, every couple of weeks perhaps checking in with that to see where things are, to make sure that what you requested to be sent to the university has been sent. But give us some time, because it does take a little bit of human resources and time to match all those things up with your application.
Great. Those were really great answers. And I think for the students who are watching, I think their anxiety levels might have come down a little bit, because, you know, during this process, students are freaking out, because when you send an application, you want to make sure everything got there. You want to call the school every single day, just to make sure everything's okay. But I think with the answers that you guys gave, number one, checking your email, that's so key. So many students are so used to, you know, getting things on Twitter and Instagram and Facebook, and you don't really get your college decisions that way. So you do have to create an email account, you know, to be able to check up on this information. So that's super important. And again, giving you guys time to actually receive the documents is also a really good idea. Again, I know this time of year is really tense and students are really, really anxious, but you know, just chilling out a little bit, making sure that you give yourself enough time to submit it, but also giving the colleges enough time to actually receive it. I think these are awesome answers. So for all of the students that are watching, you guys can calm down a little bit. You're good to go. Awesome. So our last question before we get to our Q&A is, and this is for everyone on the panel, what are 2 or 3 things that you stress to students when they're completing their college applications? And it can be any part of the college application process. But what are sort of the 2 or 3 main things that you want to stress to students?
There we go. I always like to stress that students should plan ahead. Don't procrastinate this process. So often students wait until the last minute to fill in their applications, to complete their supplements, and then they can miss out on deadlines if there's some kind of issue, or if they get into the application and they realize that it's a little bit more time consuming than they thought it would be. And so starting your applications at 11:50 the night that they're due is probably not a good thing. So I always encourage my students to plan ahead and to be thoughtful when they're submitting those applications, because you want to make sure that your essays are as strong as they possibly can be, and you want to make sure that you're giving the colleges enough information to be able to make a good decision about you.
I'm going to take it in a little bit of a different direction. Georgia State went to the Common App this year for the first time, and we've added more to our application process. And one of the things that we're hearing from students often is the way that they choose institutions. And one of the things I'll say is, don't shy away from institutions that have other requirements, meaning if they require an essay or a letter of recommendation, because it could absolutely be your dream school, and you're not even going to give it a chance because it requires an essay. And I don't think that that's necessarily the best way to choose, because you're going to be writing a lot when you're in college. So to ask somebody to write between 250 and 500 words is not an unreasonable thing, and it provides us additional insight that we might not glean from other parts of the application. So don't shy away from institutions because they have these additional requirements. And just to echo what Tanya says too is, don't wait to the last minute. If you know you're a procrastinator, get it done early. Get that list formed early and start submitting and preparing much earlier than you normally would for other things.
And I'd like to add that, in addition to get started early, make sure you give yourself enough time, pay attention to those deadlines. They can be so important. And I'm not just talking about admissions deadlines. I'm also talking about financial aid deadlines, especially if that's on the top, of your agenda, your list of things that are important to you as you're selecting a college, seeing which is the best financial aid package for you. I'd say, to be honest with you, some schools will review the students that are in before or by the required financial aid deadline, and provide a package for you. And some students that, if we have a February 15th FAFSA deadline and they're not submitting something until March 15th, they sometimes end up on our financial aid waiting list. So you don't want to put yourself in that position, because it's really unfortunate. Some schools, like for example, like Lehigh, will love a student. That student will want to be at Lehigh, but because of financial aid, it simply does not work out. So give yourself enough time, because that's also a very lengthy process. The CSS profile of some schools require that. The FAFSA, to complete, if you're doing it for the first time, it can be really lengthy and it can be really overwhelming. So use the resources, but most importantly, give yourself enough time and know what those deadlines are. I feel like you should put a little, something on your fridge that says these are when the deadlines, just so you're constantly aware of those. And one other thing is just take the whole application seriously. Not just the essay, because there's things about the application that you can no longer control, right? You can't control what happened in 9th grade anymore. You can't really control what your teachers or what your counselor is saying about you, but you can control other parts of the application that you complete. So take it very seriously, because it can seriously, dictate where the rest of your life goes. Selecting a college is very important, and that's something that you should definitely take seriously. And I know that as seniors in high school, you have so many other things going on within honors classes, AP classes, with the whole college application process. But this is also a priority, and this should also take a lot of your time. So take it seriously.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much for those answers. They were great, and I hope all of you that are watching are really getting a ton and learning a lot from this conversation. So that's it for sort of the questions that we had planned out. However, we do have a few questions in our Q&A, so I'm just going to start asking those. And the first question actually it went along actually to what all of you talked about. Is sort of paying attention to deadlines and making sure that you stick to the deadlines. So one question is, how does a student keep all of these deadlines organized? I know, Maria, you mentioned possibly posting it on your refrigerator or somewhere that you see it every day, but do you guys have any specific strategies or suggestions that students can use to make sure that they keep all of these deadlines organized?
I'd say something that works when I talk to students is, again, that idea of creating an Excel spreadsheet, or if they're more of like they need something in their hands and more of a tactile person, maybe creating separate folders for each college that they're applying to with deadlines right on top of that, so that you can see right on the front cover when everything is due. But definitely organization is key, because everything can get so overwhelming. You may have papers to write, you may have tests to prepare for, but this, again, like I said before, it's important to also stay on top of the whole college application process.
One suggestion I have is that last year I was a college counselor, and so I usually encouraged my students to actually put the college deadlines on their calendars. So if they have like a Google Calendar, it would send them a reminder a day before, 2 days before, or a week before, to remind them to get in their applications, to work on supplements, to make sure that they had the FAFSA completed. So I encourage my students to use their technology as much as possible to help remind them of the important things in their life.
Absolutely, I definitely agree, especially along the lines of technology. especially if you have an iPhone or even an Android. I mean, there are built-in calendars right in your phone that you can plug in, you know, a specific deadline, and it'll immediately pop up, or pop up the day before, or however you program it. So these are definitely some ways that you guys can stay organized as you're going through your college application process. So thank you guys for that, those answers. So we're going to move on to the next question, and this is directed toward what Scott mentioned a little bit earlier. How does a student let a college know that they're no longer interested in applying? Is it something that, should they pick up the phone and say, hey, I'm no longer interested in applying, shoot an email? How does that work?
I think there's several different ways that students can do it. We all have to offer options within email where a student can unsubscribe, and we treat that as the student is no longer interested. So at the bottom of all of our emails, we have an unsubscribe link. And when a student submits that, clicks on that, we then get a message back, and then we can withdraw them, whether they're just a prospect or if they already have an application on file, we can withdraw. I think the best way to do it, though, is to either, one, send an email directly back to us asking us to withdraw their application themselves, or reaching out to their territory manager, their admissions counselor that's responsible, and saying, hey, you know, thank you for all the time and attention you've given me. I'm no longer interested. Please withdraw my candidacy from your university.
I think the other thing that goes with that is, after you get admitted to colleges, it's important to let the colleges know if you're not going to be attending. So if you've been admitted to 3 or 4 colleges, you can only attend one. So it's really important to send a nice email or use even the portal system to let the colleges know that you won't be arriving in the fall.
Awesome. Thanks so much, guys. Especially, Tanya, what you said, I think a lot of students forget to do that because they're so jazzed that they got into all of these schools, and they have, you know, there's the one school that they plan to go to, so they're like, yeah, I got into X, Y, and Z school, I'm done. But you're really not. You do have to notify. You do have to give the colleges and universities common courtesy enough to notify them and let them know that you don't plan to attend, so they can open up those spots for another student. So thank you so much for bringing that point up, as well as Scott. Thank you for clarifying sort of how the student should notify a college. So I have a few more questions. One question is, how sort of lenient are colleges and universities when it comes to late applications? So if the deadline is on the 15th and the application comes in the mail or is, you know, received online on the 16th, how lenient are colleges in accepting those? Are you guys just strictly 15th, if it's not there by then, cut off, or how does that work? I know colleges are different, but if you guys didn't mind answering that.
Yeah, I think, again, all colleges will have their own separate way of handling late applications, but for us, if their application isn't received by the deadline, you know, it's received a day or two, I think we'll still accept it. However, it's the point where you've received some aspects of your application, let's say SAT scores are still missing, and we've already notified you twice. Usually those notifications do come with we like to call it a drop dead day, that, you know, if your application is not in by this day at 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, then we will no longer consider you to be an applicant. You know, so we're lenient, but also don't push us too much, because we're also not afraid to just say, okay, you know, you didn't submit the items by the day that you were supposed to, so we're not going to consider you for admission.
I'll add something additional to that too. You know, you have institutions where they want everything by November 15th, so if you're applying early, and then there are institutions where they might say, okay, your application needs to be by November 15th, but you have flexibility with documents to get them in by December 1st to ensure that you get a decision early. I think, again, it goes back to what Maria was saying too, is what is each institution's policy? You have to look at each institution. Most will likely say, okay, if it comes in a day or two later, we're going to treat it. But if you try to go beyond that, we may not treat you as an early applicant. We may just automatically consider you for regular decision. But again, it's going to be up to each institution to make that determination, and then what their policy about actual complete applications by EA means.
Awesome. Great.
Chelsea, you're muted.
Now I'm unmuted. Awesome. So our last question is about how a student can sort of keep up with their guidance counselors and making sure that their guidance counselors are doing their part in submitting a letter of recommendation or, you know, submitting a transcript, because a lot of students go to schools where their guidance counselors have a ton of things to do and may sometimes forget. So what are some sort of ways that students can respectfully, you know, keep up with their guidance counselor and just try to keep tabs on them in terms of having them submit their material for college? Not necessarily keep tabs, but, you know.
I'd just like to say, give them time. Usually, I mean, I haven't worked in a high school setting. I know Tanya can certainly add to this, but give them time. And also, if they're asking for certain documents by a specific deadline, make sure you're listening to their deadline as well, because you don't want to be the person who submits late and then expects everything to be done, you know, within 24 hours. I'd say give them time, and also listen to what they have to say about when you need a recommendation form by.
I think most high schools have some kind of process or procedure for requesting letters of recommendation or requesting transcripts. And so making sure that you give your teachers and your guidance counselor enough notice. The more organized you are, the more organized you can help your counselor to be. And then the other plug I'm going to actually talk about, the Common Application. When you use the Common Application or many of the online application systems, there's things that automatically notify your counselor that things need to happen. So, for example, when you submit an application via the Common Application, you're going to list who your counselor is, and then we will send your counselor an email saying, hi, your student so-and-so would like your letter of recommendation, and they'll do that for the school counselor and for your teachers. So it helps you in the process.
Awesome. Thanks so much, you guys, for answering that question. Again, I think that just goes along the lines of students' anxiety, just trying to make sure everything's done and not realizing that, you know, there are different processes and things happen, you know, in different ways, and it can't happen immediately. So again, your answers and your advice should definitely, you know, give students a little less anxiety and really help students as they go through this process. So that is it for our questions. Thanks so much for submitting those. And this essentially wraps up our Google Hangout. I want to thank our panelists so much for coming on and giving all of this really, really important information. We know that this time of the year is really crucial and critical for you. And I'm just so happy that they were able to come on and give you guys all of this information about their schools, about their different organizations, and just overall what you can be doing to make your college application sort of wrap up a success. So thank you guys so much for participating. This Google Hangout will be linked onto our blog page tomorrow. So, you know, if you wanted to come back and listen to us again or watch us again, if you enjoyed us that much, you are more than welcome to do that. It will be posted on our blog tomorrow along with the summary. So definitely feel free to do that. And look out for another Google Hangout from us next month. So have a great evening, and thank you guys for watching. Bye-bye.